Can it be best in segment? That was the question you've asked me. And we will of course experience that together. For the exterior, which is the unique setting for this vehicle, how is it different to the A7 and the A8? Interior, what have they done there, also technology-wise, infotainment-wise, if you compare it to the competitors, also with a night driving special there, and of course the driving experience, how does it master the compromise between sportiness and luxury? In the front we can see an evolution of the design, so it's not super different than the predecessor version, and it also has similarities with the A7 and the A8. Overall the A7 has this rather sporty approach, the A8 the very classic one with the luxury orientation, and this one here is somewhat in between. 4,93 meters or 16'2" is the total length of the all-new Audi A6, so the exterior dimensions haven't really changed that much. The rim style starts with 17-inch, optional 21-inch maximum. Those ones here, 20-inch. And now to the rear part here is a design that is very horizontally oriented with those new taillights that stress the width of the vehicle. Engines, this one here is the 3-liter TFSI turbo petrol engine with 340 horsepower. The overdrive distribution is always 40% in the front and 60% in the rear. This is the basic distribution, then it can vary a little bit depending on the situations. This one will be the main petrol engine. All of the petrol engines will soon also be equipped then with those particle filters. And the same goes for the TDIs, of course, for the diesel side. You start with a 2-liter TDI, this one then has front-wheel drive and only a 12-volt board net. All others, the V60 for the petrol and also the 3-liter TDIs, they come with a 48-volt board net, so more electrification. One short preview of night driving before we start with the really driving part, because this is really so fancy, so cool. Look at how this car looks like when you drive it at night. Very well done with the illumination, with the ambient light. You can pick a lot of different colors for that as well. Then we have, for example, also the head-up display, which you can very well see at night. It can display different information, also those arrows, for example, where you have to go in the route. And also very spectacular, the night vision feature, again an option that might be useful when you're really living somewhere where you don't have any exterior lighting available and you're driving a lot of time at night. And my favorite feature is definitely those those matrix LED headlights. You know, this car always came with LED, but matrix LED with the high beam function. This is then optional, and you can see the spectacular effect when you're somewhere driving with light, or maybe there's a car in front of you, then this spot is left out. So not all of those single LEDs are being activated, but then when you come to a darker area, bam, here it is, and then it widens the light view, and you really think you are in a spaceship, and everything is getting bright again. So overall the system tries to prevent anyone from getting blinded, but you should have the optimum view. And I have to say, I think I hardly ever had a nighttime ride where I could see so much. So, you know, when you're living in a crowded area where also motorways may be illuminated and you're not driving so many times at night, save the money, stick with the standard LED. But if you're really a nighttime driver, that often happens to you, or maybe in a Nordic country where it's often pretty dark, then those matrix LED lights will really help you. Also, you know, one of the technology highlights here for sure. This is the vehicle key. I think it also has a premium approach, but you can also use the keyless entry function. Just put your hand right here to close the vehicle or put it inside the door handles to open it. Main part of the interior. At the moment you can see all the infotainment system monitors are shut off. Base seats, sports seats, Sports Plus seats, and both Sports and Sports Plus are available here with this Alcantara frequency, it's called. On the outside they partly use leather red, partly real leather, but it's already a step forward in the higher trims. And then the optional one is a multi-contour seat. I showed you that in a static setup, so 4 seats available. And with those sports seats you're really fine off because you have more shoulder support right here, and they are also available then with Alcantara. And this one here gives you more headroom, especially if you don't have the panoramic roof equipped. You have plenty of headroom. Although I'm 1.86 m or 6'1". You can also adjust the steering wheel in, wow, it's like I think I've never seen a steering wheel where you can adjust it really in this distance. This is the interior overview, and definitely a wow effect. You know, I'm not too happy with the shiny black materials right there because they collect fingerprints and also scratches. Well, maybe you should just leave it then and always clean it, then it looks also fancy. And I think they have found a very cool way here for this matte aluminum style. Also, just listen to it. You just don't have so many buttons anymore. Start, stop, and then a camera button, for example, to check out this really superb camera system with a great resolution, and then just a volume button left that you can still menu control that. Digital instruments right there. I think they are best in class at the moment. You can also check out how fancy this full view of the map looks like, but you can also get other information in there, for example, and also you know, radio info, consumption info, and so on. You're pretty flexible. And this is a clear view of the head-up display. It can also show more information, as I've already shown you with this nighttime feature. Infotainment details. Interesting is that when you swipe in this menu and you press a button, for example, you also get a clicking sound and somewhat a haptical feedback, although it's just a screen. It looks great in this glass view, and look how fast it is with this new CPU unit they're using. So pretty impressive for sure. And when you want to enter an address, then you can also play together with the lower screen, because then you can either use the voice input, for example, but you can also you know, put just the letters right there, or then use a writing function. Sitting in the rear, yes, you have 1 centimeter longer legroom than in the previous generation, so it's a little bit more spacious, and you also have enough knee room here, even if the tall driver is sitting in the front. However, with those big luxury sedans, you always have the problem that the package, so considering the length on the exterior and the room you get on the interior, is really, really bad. So they are not using the length they have. So, and then you have 530 liters, quite square dimensions for a luxury sedan. So it is somehow very well used, but of course the building form itself is limiting very much. So the estate is the way to go then if you want it more versatile. Let's start the driving part, aka Thomas's driving lounge. And interesting, we have the dynamic all-wheel steering here. That means the tires on the rear axle can also move, and when we are going slowly, especially up to 5% across, you can really see it at the rear tire there, how they move, a little bit left or a little bit right. It's really interesting to see, and accounts for minus 1.1 meter turning circle of this vehicle when you're driving slowly, and also the car feels more agile, especially when driving at slower speeds. When you are at higher speeds, then it's not about the turning agility, it's more about the stability, and that is then up to 2% in the same direction steering like the front wheels. That's the difference. And so it is a costful option, but it is one that you should be going for if you have enough money. And if you want to have an option which, you know, really gives you some technology advantage, because it makes the car indeed feel more agile. Also when I'm turning now in those very tight corners, which is really fun to do, although the car is big. So usually I would say, a car of that size is, at some point on some tight roads not so much fun to drive, but this all-wheel steering really accounts for it, that, it fakes a shorter wheelbase. This is the driving feeling you get from this then, so this is pretty cool. As I said earlier, we also have the adaptive air suspension built in here. It is, when you want to save money, you can stay with the base suspension, it will do fine. But if you're, wow, cool, this is a great view here on the River Douro. That ultimately ends in Porto, in Portugal. So if you have the money, you should get the air suspension because it gives you this flying carpet riding comfort. Also, the non-air suspensions are really good at Audi, so you shouldn't be afraid to get also the base one. But then again, if you have a good budget for that, leasing or buying wise, the air suspension will give you more comfort and also more flexibility, because at lower speeds I can, have the best comfort. It really feels like the car would be literally flying on the road. This is pretty cool. And at higher speeds then I can still get some more stability, because I can also pick it in the drive select. I can remain in auto mode, dynamic mode, comfort, efficiency, or individual, and I can also raise or lower the car. So if I'm facing some bumps or maybe going slightly off-road, I can put the car a little bit higher, and that's pretty cool. In the auto mode, the car decides itself what it's going to do with the dual clutch transmission, automatic gearbox. You can always use the shifting pedals here. It goes into manual mode. You can shift up again or hold the pedal to go back to the D mode. Besides the driving modes, you can also pull on the shifting lever, then you get in this S mode, but this just for shifting. The gears are turned up higher, shifting later, and shifting down earlier again. This is automatically happening when you go to the dynamic mode of the vehicle, and I can do it right now as well. So when I'm in this dynamic mode, I can also see that the suspension is going down. I have more contact to the road, car feels stiffer, the steering gets a little bit more precise and a little bit more resistance from it, and the gears are then ultimately in this S mode, and it gets some more boost from the engine then as well. So that air suspension really makes you very flexible, and for example the sport mode is good, that you can do some overtaking maneuver here quite quickly. Thank you so much, that was really nice. So you can get more power from that engine without shifting down. But then again, you can also just stay in the normal driving mode and use the pedals right there. And here again, those corners are actually for a big luxury sedan rather tight, but then again, this great suspension together with a progressive steering they've worked on, this was one of the factors they've improved now. So you see, I can keep my hands on the steering wheel all the time. I don't have to steer much. So the angle of the corner is pretty much like the angle of the steering wheel. And that to me is one of the most important factors when driving the car. And that is one thing I feel sometimes that is lacking, especially in base Mercedes models, if you compare them to that. Maybe it gives you a little bit more natural steering wheel feeling, because some criticize with Audi that it would be too artificial. But then again, at Mercedes you have to steer much more. So with a base Mercedes E-Class, for example, I wouldn't really have fun here in those corners. I would have to steer, maybe this angle more each corner to the right and the left. With the BMW, they have something in between. They give you a very natural steering feeling, but you don't have to turn that much like with Mercedes. So it's really like, from step to step how those three premium manufacturers behave also in steering wise. It's also very interesting finding when you really drive all three direct competitors. So let's see if we can overtake this truck then in front of us. And this also accounts for the feeling that this car doesn't feel too big. It is really big, but for example also the E-Class and the BMW 5 Series, they feel bigger when driving. I mean, they use a lot of aluminum here also to keep the weight down. Here we go. And how effortless this vehicle does that. Wow, that's really cool. Here also in the corner, good contact to the road again, good feedback from the car. So aluminum, for example, used at the hood, at the doors to keep the weight down. But nowadays, you know, BMW 7 Series and 5 Series, they introduced this also a lot of, you know, aluminum used, the 7 Series even carbon fiber. So they, you know, a lot of years Audi was the only aluminum low weight car in this segment. Now others have catch up there as well. So yes, it is a relaxed feeling and it is also a sporty feeling, and we're not in the, you know, S6 or something. So this is still somewhat the base model with this petrol engine, and I don't have the feeling it should be any, you know, any sportier. So with, for example, the Mercedes E-Class, you have the base E-Class, which is pretty, you know, lax luxury-wise, so not sporty at all. And then you gotta get a E43 to get it sporty. And with BMW and Audi both, they are also the base models drive pretty funny and sporty. Let's do some 70 to 120 kilometers. That was already 125. So you can see really good performance here from the 3-liter V6. The sound is not too loud, so it's rather subtle. And I mean, if you're driving an A6, you also do not want to show off. So I think that's also perfectly fine decision-wise then. So now the cruise control, you can set it here at the column next to the steering wheel. And I also have the possibility then to deactivate or activate the lane guidance. So if I want to drive a little bit sportier, or maybe just do the acceleration and braking part with the AC but steer my own, that's fine. But I can also activate it, and then the car is really helping me to keep the lane. So this is not a system where you should take your hands off the steering wheel, just I'm demonstrating you that the car is being kept in the lane, and that works very accurately. Well, if you compare it to the A7 and the A8, yes, the A7 is the sporty approach, the A8 is the long approach, the big luxury chauffeur approach. This one here, the very classic approach, as I've told you, and it is rather an evolution in design, so nothing super spectacular, but it is very sharply designed. And there will of course also be the estate if you want to have some more room on the interior. The interior is so precise, they have perfection in detail. The infotainment system, yeah, I think among the 3 German premium manufacturers, I think it is the best solution. However, you can always say that's maybe a little bit over-engineered, and they have, you know, they have to try to find some more solutions that it's easier to control, although you have so many controls available. Also good that we have Alcantara seats available even here in the high luxury segment. Driving wise, it was very, very good, I can tell you, daytime and nighttime. So this car here, already in the base version, really masters the compromise between sportiness and the luxury comfort very well, and to me even a little bit more than its premium competitors.